From Relay FM, it's Connected, episode number 26. Today's episode of Connected is brought to you by Hover, Simplified Domain Management, Automatic, Drive Safer, Drive Smarter, and PDF Pen Pro 7. Take control of PDFs on your Mac. My name is Mike Hurley, and I have the pleasure, as always, of being joined by Mr. Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Buonasera, Mike.
Hello.
Hi.
And howdy, Mr. Stephen Hackett.
Hey, boys.
How you doing?
I'm good. How's Europe doing? Europe's good?
Yeah, it's dark, but it's fine.
It's fine.
It's midnight, so I
do
guess
you
it
have,
is.
Do you have, Steven, do you have snow in Tennessee?
No. Memphis maybe gets like an average of like 1.5 inches a year or something. We get very little snow here. But when we do, because we don't know what to deal with it, like everything shuts down and people like freak out because there's 1 inch of snow on the ground and they can't go anywhere or drive. Yeah. We're really wimpy compared to our friends in the Northeast. Somewhere Dan Morin is just like smashing his phone against the wall listening to this. But so yeah. So,
Michael, what about the UK? Did you get snow in the UK?
Very similar to Memphis. Over the last few years, we have had snow. We've not had any this year, so I expect that there probably won't be any now because it usually has happened by now. But when we do get snow, like a snow that settles, like maybe a few inches or whatever, all of London closes. It's just a disaster.
Just closes.
There's always like headlines on the news, like how many millions of pounds were lost in the economy because basically every business stops working.
Except Relay.
That's just $20 though, so no big deal.
Is the dollar that strong? That doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I wish the dollar was that strong.
It would work well for you.
Oh, it would be great for me. I'm now in that very small group of people in the UK that wants the dollar to get stronger than the pound. There's not many of us. I am one of those people.
So you guys remember last week I told you about the Gladiator movie, and the guy that I knew was in the movie. Right?
He was the son.
He was the son of the gladiator of Maximus, and so I told you that his brother now is in a band, and so I was just watching the band on television because there's in Italy we have this sort of national music contest, which is called the Festival of Sanremo. It's a town in the north of Italy, and so his brother was playing with his band on television. That was pretty cool. We used to, like, when I was in high school and I was in my band, I'm sure, Mike, that you remember my band.
Senior.
Because, yes, you shared a couple of songs once. And so I used to play together with this guy. We would go to parties and we would, like, drink a little too much and then play guitar. So now the guy's on television and I'm on Relay talking to Mike and Steven. It's quite a different roads we've taken.
Was that in the show last week or was that after the show? I can't remember.
I don't know. I think I was on the show. I asked you about the name of the Maximus guy.
Yeah. No, I know we were talking about it as the three of us. I just can't remember if it's in the episode. Like,
I watched The Gladiator on TV. It's still a great movie.
Good
still
stuff.
A good movie.
Should we do some follow-up?
The follow-up is short this week. I think that we broke everyone's hearts when we ended the old show notes or browsers in an old show note. Oh, good grief. You know, the thing that we did
we finished show notes, if I remember.
Show notes are done.
Killed them.
And browsers don't exist anymore. Although it was funny, even throughout last week, like people who hadn't listened to the show yet, like we got some more emails and like tweets like, no, that's done. But we do have a couple pieces of follow-up we want to talk about. The first one's not really so much follow-up, but sort of like a shout-out.
Follow out, remember? This is how it works.
I'm not familiar with that show.
We follow up on previous shows. We follow out the things that are unrelated to other shows. That we're working with this. We got to adopt this. This can be our thing.
Is this a new terminology?
You've not been listening to Upgrade. Yes, it is.
I told you that I don't listen to podcasts.
I thought you were going to say, I don't listen to Upgrade. I was like, oh, knife in the heart.
I don't listen to podcasts much because I just don't have the time. Just too many podcasts. I talk to you directly. I don't need to listen to you much.
Well, okay then.
Sorry, I'm just behind. Come on, don't give me a hard time for this.
No, it's okay. Basically, Jason coined a term for if you are talking about a podcast that is not your podcast, and you're like following up on that show, we call it follow out because it's out to another show. It's got nothing to do with us, but we're talking about it anyway.
It has something to do with you.
It does have something to do with me.
Because yesterday you were on Mac Break Weekly, episode 441.
I was. Imagine that.
It's crazy. I remember, like 2006, 2007, like early on, listening to Mac Break Weekly, and now you're on it, which is super cool. It's a great episode. I finished it up this morning. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, your face looks great on video, Mike.
Thank you.
Especially the beard looks amazing.
Oh, it was trimmed. I went and had it professionally trimmed. Not for that show, but I did have it trimmed.
Fancy, nice.
It's very.
I like it. I like you, Mike.
Uh,
You look great on video.
Thank you, buddy.
Genuine opinion. I'm a video netcast reviewer. So
recording video shows. I mean, I've done a couple now. It's very different. It's very, very different. There's so many things that you have to think about and do that you don't usually have to think about or do. You know, because you never know when the camera's gonna be on you. Like it just is. Like like all of a sudden, there you can see yourself because you see the feed. Like they give you back the feed in Skype. But you kind of like you're never 100% like you never know if you're gonna see it. It's very weird. Video is very weird. It totally changes things as well. Just very peculiar. But it's enjoyable. I like doing it when I do it, but I don't want to do it for any of my shows.
Right. I mean, because normally you podcast, people might not know this, but you podcast in like a speed skating suit.
I'm actually wearing an ATP t-shirt right now.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why would you?
I don't know.
So people should go check it out. The link is in the show notes, which can be found in any modern browser at a URL that Mike will now describe.
You can go to relay.fm/connected/26, where you will find the link for Mac Break Weekly episode 441, which is insane. 441.
So crazy.
So Connected is my same age this week. It's 26.
Hooray!
We're in about 10 episodes. It's gonna be your same age, Steven. So
I just turned 29 like 2 weeks ago.
I just want to check this now.
We are basically almost 2 years in, and you're still telling this fake story about your birth.
Episode 1 of Mac Break Weekly was on August 12th, 2006.
That's before
Holy
the
moly.
iPhone. Wow.
That's
yeah.
Well, that's when iPod rumors were big.
I remember listening to the show like leading up to and then after like the iPhone was released. That was when Merlin was on the show.
Yeah,
man,
it's crazy.
Nice.
We talked a little bit last week about Microsoft and their new Outlook app, which of course is actually another app that they acquired. And there was rumor that broke I think it was right before we recorded, that they had purchased Sunrise. And today, Microsoft and the Sunrise development team confirmed it. So, Federico, you seem excited about this.
I am, because, I mean, Microsoft is clearly late to mobile devices in general. But they've been trying to catch up. You know, they do. They're doing Office on smartphones and tablets now. They have integrations with Dropbox. They do. They bought Acompli and they turn it into a free Outlook app that works with all email services except IMAP. So they've been trying to, to kind of have the same level of basic functionality of competitors in this space. And now Sunrise is a great calendar app for multiple platforms. That's really the point. They're not buying fantastical. They're not trying to buy iOS only apps. They want to buy cross-platform stuff because they need to, do apps for iOS and Android. So it makes sense. Sunrise is a great calendar app. It's got integrations with third-party services like Todoist, Evernote, Foursquare, Twitter, Soundkick. Asana, if anybody uses that. There's a bunch of something they call the Sunrise platform, where you can, if you have an API, you can make sure that your service shows up in Sunrise. So they bought this calendar service that has vision for a calendar that shows you more stuff than just calendar events. And I think it's smart for Microsoft to buy. I mean, because clearly at this point they either come up with stuff of their own quickly, or they buy something that already exists and that it's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And they're buying great apps. So I think that's at least they're spending their money right. That's my argument.
So smart. This is what Marissa Mayer did when she went to Yahoo. Like, it's that, don't spend millions of dollars and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of man hours, thousands of man hours. Just buy. Like, you've got the money. Just buy small teams, because you get good apps and you get really smart people that made those apps that can help drive the products. Like, it's genius. It's genius. Like, it's not like an incredibly complex strategy, but I think it's a very, very effective one. Because if you buy apps like Acompli that are already well respected and don't do too much to them, you then become Microsoft with a well respected app, like on iOS. Like, I think the problem they're actually starting to face now is the apps on iPhone and Android are probably better than the ones on Windows Phone. Like, the Outlook app on iPhone is probably better now than the Outlook app on the Windows Phone.
I'm not sure. Is there going to be a Sunrise app for Windows Phone?
Well, I don't think it will be called. I think that it will form part of Outlook, I suppose, what they're planning on doing here, right? I mean, have they said, because they didn't keep Acompli, did they? They rebranded
Nope.
it.
Yes.
So
it became Outlook.
So I don't know, they might call it Microsoft Calendar or something like that, or Outlook Calendar, because Outlook is a calendar and email app. Yeah, technically.
That's my question also in the small link that I put on Mac Stories. Is there going to be, because there's a calendar view in Outlook, in the Outlook app for iPhone and iPad. So is there going to be some sort of integration between Outlook and Sunrise? It's going to be called Outlook Calendar, or just Calendar for Outlook? The brand looks confusing. I don't know.
They may just no longer be a Sunrise app, and like the functionality might be rolled into the Outlook app.
That's my thought.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, it's you're gonna have like a calendar app inside Outlook, and then another one. Like, I don't know. I think we're gonna see Sunrise as we know it today sort of go away, and some of that stuff filter back up.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Maybe they just wanted really smart calendar people.
Yeah. I think it's good. I agree with you, Federico, that I think Microsoft is doing some smart stuff, but I want them to I want to see how this plays out long term. Like, they're doing some good stuff right now on iOS, but when Google first started with the Gmail app and the Maps app and stuff, they weren't super great, and now they're actually for the most part pretty good. It took them a little time to get there. So I'm curious if Microsoft will take that same path where you could be using a lot of Microsoft apps and services on iOS and still feel like a first class citizen. I hope they do. I think it's good to have options, and I think they, like we talked about last week, they just need to really sort of recapture the consumer base that they've lost in the mobile space. So we'll see.
Yeah, what I'm interested in seeing is like if they go the Google route, like you now feel like you're using good iOS apps, but iOS apps that don't feel like iOS apps. Do you know what I mean? Like, when Google first started out with their iOS apps, like they felt like what the iOS apps at the time, but now they do feel and look more like Android apps on iOS. Even though they've got a totally different design language, and I wonder if we'd see Microsoft going down that route, because Microsoft visually for their own platforms have a very different design, and I wonder if like they want to get in now, but like as we move down the road, I wonder if it will change. I don't think that's a bad thing, because I actually really like the material design, and I like the way that they've brought that over to iOS, except the background on Chrome. For iOS, the weird background, I don't know why it's there. I know why it's there, but it looks weird. But I like the way that Maps looks and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see if Microsoft keep their own visual identity and like move that into these apps, or if they're happy to keep them separate.
I wonder about the end game here, because Google on iOS, they can make apps, and even if you don't buy an Android device, Google is fine because they're just, okay, you use my apps and I get your data, I collect your personal information, and I make money anyway. But Microsoft, what is it? What do they want to do? Because they have fine iOS apps at this point. And I'm not buying Windows Phone devices. And by me, I refer to the user in general. I don't want to buy Windows Phone devices. I like Microsoft's apps on iOS. But am I supposed to pay for Microsoft services at this point? Is this what they want? How they want to use the apps for, to make me pay? Or do they want to collect personal information about me? Because information doesn't seem to be Microsoft's business in the way that it is for Google.
No.
So is this a way to make me pay for Office, to make me pay for OneDrive? Okay.
I think it's either to have you personally want to pay for Office, or for you to continue to be happy using Microsoft products in your workplace. So, like, basically, Microsoft either need to sell it to you or they need to sell it to your employer. And if, again, we go down the bring your own device route, because people want to use their own devices because they're not happy with the other software and services that they're using, maybe Microsoft products. So if they can try and change that, and they can make you happy to use Microsoft products, either you buy Word for yourself or you're happy to use it at work. That's the way I see it, or what I think is their, because they are saying now, they are using the term Windows as a service. That's what they see themselves moving towards. Like, they are a service provider. Do
you think Microsoft can make money from personal users who don't need apps in the workplace, who just work for, they just use apps personally?
I think so. I think so. I don't think any of their current apps are the apps that would do that. I think they need to think about some different things. But if Microsoft can continue to sell to the workplace, that's all they need to do to make a ton of money. Because every business in the world, right? Yeah. They pretty much every single business should or will come into a point in their time where they will need Office. I had to buy Office within like 2 weeks of starting Relay because we received a contract in the Microsoft Office document file, like in Word. So it's like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. If I need to keep the formatting of this document, so I bought Office.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm using Outlook every day. I keep Office on my iPad because I need Excel for how it creates charts and graphs. I'm just wondering, I'm not paying Microsoft any money. I don't think they're collecting, they are collecting data about me, but they don't show me ads or whatever. I don't use Bing. I don't use Outlook websites or that kind of stuff. I'm just wondering if they, because the app strategy needs to change, I guess, at some point. Because they have Dropbox features. So I'm not supposed to pay for OneDrive because I can just use Dropbox. So I wonder if maybe down the road they will add more paid features to Outlook to entice me to pay more as a personal user instead of as a business owner or as a team manager.
Yeah, I agree. Or there'll be something where it'll be like, this is great, but if you use OneDrive rather than Dropbox, you'll get X, Y, and Z, which is more awesome. And then you'll be like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got lots to cover today. That was just... I don't know where that topic came from. Let's take a quick break. Thank our first sponsor this week. I want to take a moment to thank our friends over at Automatic. Automatic is a connected car adapter. It plugs into your car's diagnostic port, the one that your mechanic uses. Every single car since '96 has one of these. And then what it does, Automatic will pair to their free iPhone app, and it connects your car to the internet. The advantage of this is stuff like, I've spoke about this before, you can have all of your trips logged for you. That can help you out with things like gas mileage and things like that. It can help you locate your car. It can help you do things like if your check engine light comes on, it can explain to you in plain English what's going on. It can allow you to also clear those lights as well, right from your phone. But today, I want to focus on another feature of Automatic that's super important. I spoke with the guys at Automatic yesterday, and they said, we have this thing, we have a story, Would you like to share it with your listeners? And they told me the story, and I do. So for the sake of privacy, we're going to call this guy John. John is an Automatic user. And last October, this is a true story, he was driving his Honda Accord on a rural country road, and he had to swerve to avoid hitting a deer. John was maybe going a little bit too fast when he made the maneuver, and he had to overcorrect as he was swerving. It then caused his car to spin out and flip multiple times, eventually coming to a stop upside down as the car had landed on its roof. His Automatic, which he obviously had plugged in as being a user, detected what had occurred and immediately contacted the emergency services. They were able to dispatch teams to his exact location within a minute, as the Automatic could tell the emergency services exactly where the car was located. Luckily, John managed to avoid any serious injury. He was just scraped and bruised and a bit bashed up, but his car was completely totaled. And as you can imagine, John continues to be a loyal Automatic customer today with his new car. So I wanted to tell you this story to kind of highlight something that I've kind of mentioned in passing in previous weeks, is that it can contact emergency services for you. But for $99, if it can do that, I feel like you should kind of just have one. Like, if this is a situation that you can be helped in, like if you flip over multiple times and land on the roof of your car, obviously I don't want that to happen to anyone. But for $99, I think that this is maybe something you should think about if you haven't. It seems like it could get you out of a pretty sticky situation. Like, this is the power of having your car connected to the internet. Like, I just thought it was a fantastic story, and I wanted to share it with you. You can order an Automatic right now for just $99.95. There are no subscription fees or any other hidden charges, and we have a special deal for you. If you go to automatic.com/connected, you can get 20% off an Automatic, bringing the total down to just $80. It ships in 2 business days for free, and has a 45-day return policy if you're not happy. So go to automatic.com/connected, give it a shot. If you don't like it, you can return it, but I think you're going to love it. Thank you so much to Automatic for sponsoring this show and all of Relay FM.
All right. Topic 0 this week is a computer I have sitting next to me. That is not, as you might mock me for endlessly, some sort of old Power Mac with weird ports on the back. It's not that.
Okay.
Oh, we could do that. We could do like an old Mac of the week. No.
Please go ahead.
So,
please no.
please don't talk about that.
Whatever you do, please let's not do this stuff.
So we maybe like a month ago we talked about the Chromebook a little bit, and we set a challenge out that I would use a Chromebook for there was some disagreement, but sort of roughly like internet work stuff. So relay stuff. I've done some 512 stuff on it. So I had a few thoughts about the Chromebook in general and about the one I have here. And then the chat room who's listening live has asked some questions that I'm going to answer. And then very sort of threateningly in the show notes, someone has written Federico has questions. So I'm a little afraid.
I wrote that myself. I talked about myself in third person in the show notes.
Yeah. Well, you have to because you don't know who said it.
Just as I have questions. I like that one.
So I have been using the Acer C720, which is like $200 on Amazon Prime. Pretty hard to argue with that. Little 11.6 inch computer, so kind of like MacBook Air sized. It's been really interesting for some reasons that I didn't really foresee. So the general kind of, if you're not familiar, a Chromebook is basically a laptop with like the Chrome browser attached to it. That's really about it. It has local storage, as you can download things to it, and it does a lot of cool stuff with Google Drive. Just keep that offline if your internet connection goes out and that sort of thing. But more or less, it is a browser hooked up to a keyboard, which is a little weird. We've spoken a lot in the past about sort of our love of like native applications, and I definitely would much prefer to using something like Mail.app over Gmail on the web, and especially if you have like multiple accounts and everything, doing that all in the browser is strange. But in saying that, it's important, like, I am not an average user by any stretch of the imagination. I think most people I see, even with Macs, like, they're opening up their MacBook Air and they're going to Chrome and they're doing everything in Chrome. And for that sort of user, a Chromebook actually is a really interesting product because it kind of gets to the heart of how a lot of people are using their computers these days. Chrome, the browser, is very OS-like for a lot of people because they're doing everything in it. And so it's not a huge jump to see, to see how you could live with something like this if you're that sort of user. There are a couple things that I've missed. The two big ones are Text Expander and 1Password. Two utilities that I rely on my Mac to make me work faster. Text Expander especially, like when I'm writing, I have a lot of like markdown stuff and things I can do very quickly, and I have to do all that manually without it. And it's not that it's a deal breaker, but it slows me down.
I have an incredible amount of muscle memory devoted to Text Expander.
Oh, me too.
It's only when I notice I quit the app accidentally or something, and I'm like, I type something, I'm like, it's broken. All I know is something's broken. Like, I can't immediately work out what it is. It's like, but yeah.
Yeah. 1Password does have, I sync 1Password with Dropbox, and they do have something called 1Password Anywhere. There's a link to the show notes where you can actually get to your 1Password. You log into Dropbox and you go to this URL. I have Dropbox with two-factor authentication turned on, so I feel a little bit better about having that enabled. So I can like open 1Password in a tab in Chrome and copy passwords out. Not great, not nearly as integrated as it is on the Mac or even on Windows. And that's 1Password is an example of like sometimes it's a little weird that the Chrome extension doesn't work, but because this syncs with Chrome on my computer, the plugin is there. So occasionally I get like a warning saying the plugin is not working, but I can't disable it because then it would disable it on my Mac as well because Chrome syncs all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a little like weird edge cases, but all in all, things work pretty well.
So 1Password Anywhere, you're accessing it in like via a web view. You're not.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can still get to the stuff, but it's just nowhere near as useful.
Right. So the Acer C720, it's super fast. The thing boots up in like 4 seconds. I mean, it's really unbelievable. The keyboard's not bad for an 11-inch machine. It's not as good as an Apple keyboard. The trackpad's not as good as an Apple trackpad, but it's the best like $200 keyboard and trackpad I've ever used. Battery life is just incredible. I think because it is basically just a web browser, I don't think the OS is real power hungry. But I mean, routinely over 8 hours of battery life on it easily, if not more so than I read in the reviews. It's still a $200 computer. It still feels like a $200 computer in some ways, but it's not as bad as you would think. It's not like using like some old cruddy netbook. It's definitely a step up from that experience that you may have had, 4, 5, 6 years ago when netbooks were kind of a thing. So I have chat room questions. You guys want me just to go through these?
Yeah.
I don't want to like monologue, but
No.
I pulled out 5 or 6. So the first one is, did you install Crouton? So Crouton is a sort of, I guess it's a package. And a couple links in the show notes where the C720, as with a lot of other Chromebooks, you can install Ubuntu on them pretty easily. There's even some packages where you can install like ChromeOS and Linux, like you can dual boot, or that you can even run at the same time and like flip between them. So you can be in ChromeOS and slide over to Linux and do something. I have that set up. It's a little nuts. I haven't been in Ubuntu a lot, but if you need something, for instance, like Sublime Text, like there's not a native text editor for ChromeOS. And there's some markdown stuff on the web, but it's sort of janky. So if you need like a couple native apps, you can go through these insane steps and run Linux on this thing. Let's see what else. Are web apps as responsive as native apps? I mean, it's very similar to how it is on the Mac. The answer is no. I will say that Chrome itself feels very fast on the machine, but you're still working in web apps, and I think web apps for the foreseeable future will be slower than native applications. Have you experienced any bugs with audio or video tearing or anything like that? YouTube and stuff works fine. I haven't had any issues with lag on the machine. Like even on like 1080p YouTube stuff, it's been rock solid. No problems there at all. Can you do audio video stuff? Can you podcast on a machine like this? Not that I've discovered. Again, you're basically using a browser, and so you don't have the sort of flexibility you have with sort of a air quotes full operating system. You could probably do it on the Linux side, but again, like out of the box, I don't think you could podcast on a Chromebook.
That could change quite soon.
I know there's like the weird web thing that someone's working on.
There's a few of them.
Yeah.
And it's possible, like the way the Chrome would still enable it. I think even on a Chromebook, you would still be able to do it. So that there is a potential that stuff like that could change in the near future, I think.
Yeah. So, maybe. At this point, though, I don't think you could because Skype is stuck in a Chrome tab. Can you write for 512?
This doesn't connect via Skype, though.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
But currently, the answer I think is no. Can you write articles for 512 pixels? Yes, I've done several in Google Docs, but it is not as good as something like Byword because it doesn't do any of the markdown stuff natively. I don't have any of the text expander stuff to like bring in a link and wrap it correctly and do that sort of thing. So I can, it's just a little bit slower. And then someone asked what the touchscreen is like. This is not the touchscreen model. There is one that is a touchscreen, but I don't like in using it's using Chrome. Like Chrome on the Mac, Chrome on this thing look the same. Like I don't think a touchscreen would be super helpful. A lot of the UI is small, at least on this screen resolution. So I feel like it could be a little frustrating to deal with the touchscreen. But I haven't had firsthand experience with it. So now we come to the part that's Federico has questions.
So I want to know, does this get updates when the real Chrome, I guess, for computers is updated? Does it get the same update cycle? Did you see updates for ChromeOS?
Yes, I've seen a couple updates. I've had this thing maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I've seen a couple updates. It basically just gives you a little alert in the bottom, and you click on it, and it reboots. The Chrome version is a little bit different than what's on the Mac. So it seems like to be maybe a different branch, but it's definitely updated frequently. Seems to be at least. And what's cool about it is you can actually, there's actually a website, I don't have it handy, but you can download a recovery image and put it on a USB key. So you can like wipe this thing and reformat it and all, just like you can kind of a normal computer.
Mm-hmm. So in general, I want to know, do you think that most people would like a computer like this instead of a PC or a Mac or an iPad for others? Would you recommend this computer to other people?
I think if budget is your primary concern, I would say yes. I think if you've got $1,000 to spend, I would say buy a MacBook Air because you get all the benefits of everything you can do in Chrome plus all the native applications and sort of a mature operating system. There's been articles recently about Chromebooks and education really taking off, and maybe even at the iPad's expense. I think that is definitely a place where Chromebook can really shine because they're cheap. If it gets smashed, it's not a huge deal. Everything's web based, so if it gets wiped or you get a different one, you just log into it and all your stuff's there. So I think if you're on a budget or if you're in that sort of environment, I think it's at the very least a really good alternative to an iPad if you don't want a tablet. I would not say that it is better for the work that I do than an iPad. I don't think it is, but I could see for a segment of the population, maybe even a big segment, at the very least it's a viable contender. A weird contender, but again, maybe I'm different from you guys in this, but I don't do a lot of work in the browser. Like even like posting to 512, which is on Squarespace, I'll write in Byword and do everything and then just copy it into Squarespace. I don't do a lot of work in a browser tab. most days. And so for me, that's been weird, but I think I'm in the minority there.
I could do an incredible amount of what I do with a Chromebook. Like, obviously, except for the recording, which is obviously extremely important. So much of what I do is in Google Docs, and I do it in the browser. So I would be pretty okay, I think. I don't want to do that, but I could.
Well, there's a question, I guess. Could you survive, or would you like working like that? Because those are two different things. Yes, you
They're
could
two
survive.
massively different things. Yes, I agree.
You could survive. You could. I mean, I could work for Mac Stories. I could. I don't know. Use the email in the browser and then write in some Markdown web app, and then use Slack in the browser. It would be pretty limiting. I wouldn't like or love working like that, I think. I don't know. There's no iMessage for the web, which is kind of a problem.
Yeah. I could survive. Say that my MacBook Pro was in the shop for a week. I could get by on this. I wouldn't love it. I wouldn't reach for this if my MacBook Pro or my iPad were available. But for getting by, I could definitely do it. It wouldn't be my first choice, though, by any stretch.
Any parting thoughts on it, Stephen?
I mean, I think my overall thought is that I think ChromeOS and maybe even the Acer C720 in particular, but Chromebooks, I think are a lot more. I can see how they're more attractive than I initially thought. Like, I can see why so many people, use them, especially in education. But I could see how these things could take off in a way that I didn't understand before. And again, it comes back to that a lot of people just use their browser, and this isn't a bad experience for that at all. So I'm not switching to it, but I am more impressed than I thought I would be. And I will admit I went into it pretty jaded, and it's been a pretty enlightening little experiment.
Do you think you're impressed because it proves that some apps can work only as browser versions, or are you impressed because it's genuinely a good computer? Like, I want to understand, do you get the feeling that, it's good for a browser, or it's a good computer, it's a good OS? Like, I still struggle to understand ChromeOS's concept. Why does it need to prove a point? It sort of sounds like
I don't think it's about proving a point. I think it's that a lot of people don't need all the overhead that we deal with every day, and that for a segment, probably a growing part of the consumer population, this meets their needs. Not to say that it really competes with OS X or even Windows. I don't think it does. I mean, side by side, the spec sheets are hilarious. But I think there is a certain type of person who maybe is not too computer savvy, or is super budget constricted, or just doesn't need the weight of something like Mac OS X or Windows. And for that sort of person, I think if you're in that category, I think it is a good computer. Is it a good computer compared to my $2,000 MacBook Pro? No. But that doesn't mean it can't meet the needs of a segment of the population just because I don't fit into it very cleanly. Does that make sense? I don't know if I actually answered your question. So I think it just depends on your needs. And I think if you're on the low end of the market, I think if I had to choose between this, a $200 Chromebook, and a $400 Windows laptop, if that was sort of my two decisions, a Mac wasn't in the equation and an iPad wasn't in the equation, I think if you're in that sort of decision-making process, and a lot of people are, then I think that this is a really good alternative. I think that's great. I think there needs to be choice, and not just at the high end where we live, but in all brackets of the market, I think there should be choice, and I think Google's done that.
Did you use Google Now on it?
I did not. Well, so let me take that back. So that is sort of built into the menu bar, but since I don't use Gmail day to day, like some of that stuff is not as helpful for me because I use iCloud for my personal stuff, which has been a little limiting, I think, in my experimentation. But it knows like basketball games and stuff. It kind of pops up, and that's helpful. But I don't think I get the full benefit of it because I'm not in the Google ecosystem with my personal data day to day.
This week's episode of Connected is also brought to you by our friends over at Hover. Hover is our favorite place to buy and manage domain names. I see Stephen was re-registering or renewing a domain today from hover.com. Is that correct, Stephen?
That is correct. They sent me an email and I said, yes, I would like to renew that. It's great.
Can you share with the listeners the URL that you renewed?
worldsgreatestpodcast.com.
Okay, great. I've been getting a lot of renewal notices from Hover recently, and I wondered why, and it's because of when me and Matt used to register domains on Hover every week on Bionic. So I've been getting like, oh man, all these things.
Can you share some of these?
I can't even remember, like just weird stuff. Lots of volcano related things. Anyway, Hover, that just goes to say, Hover is the place to go if you're buying a domain name for something serious, something silly, play a joke on a friend. It doesn't matter because they have all the domain options that you're going to want. They have .com, .co, .me. They also have like .plumbing, .academy, .coffee, anything. All of those crazy ones, you can get all of those as well. They have them all there. If you want to go and take a look at hover.com, you just go to their site, hover.com, and you type in the phrase that you're looking for or type in some keywords, and they're going to show you a lovely long list of all the things they have available. They're going to use their very clever domain name robots to suggest some things, maybe if the domain's not available, to suggest some different variations on that to help you try and find the thing that you really want to look for. When you're trying to name a project, like naming projects, naming websites, naming companies is a really hard thing to do. And these days you need to have a good domain. And you don't, after you're spending hours and hours and hours trying to think up a name for your new project, new company, you want to be able to just go and register it as quickly as possible. And that's what Hover allows you to do. They allow you to see if it's available. If it is, you can get to the checkout screen in just a few clicks. You're not looking through lists and lists and lists, checking boxes, unchecking boxes to make sure you don't buy the extended double platinum gold warranty. You're not getting any of that. They just keep it nice and clean. They just give you what you need and nothing more. They have Whois privacy for free of all of their domains. You can, if you want to set up email stuff with them as well, you can do that, but they don't bully you into doing it. They have great customer support. They have a no hold, no wait, no transfer telephone support. They have great email support too. They have great guides. They've just got the whole lot. I love Hover because they're easy to use, they're a great company, and they're no mess. So what you want to do is go to hover.com right now and use the code intersection at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase at hover.com and show your support for this show. So it's code intersection. Because Hover at the intersection of good domain names and easy to do it. Thank you so much to Hover for sponsoring this week's show.
Oh, that's great. So, again, we haven't really talked about photo management before, but we're going to try it out. Okay. So we record this show on Wednesdays, as you know. Last week on Thursday, Photos, the new iPhoto aperture replacement for OS X, shipped to developers. So this is part of 10.10.3, which is not public yet. It's to developers only, to members of the Yosemite beta testing, Appleseed program, that sort of thing. Coming later this year, it'll be in public beta, I think, for a while. Anyways, it's here. You can play with it if you're in one of those programs, and I think at least a couple of us have played with it a little bit, and it's here and it's shiny. And
a couple of us means you and Mike usually.
No, I haven't touched it.
I thought I've played with it.
Yeah, I haven't. I have my iCloud Photo library just on iOS.
Oh,
because I didn't want to download. I didn't want to download the beta because then what if it breaks Skype and Mike is angry and I can.
Oh yeah, I just went for it. I had a bootable backup first. Don't worry, I did it correctly.
Yeah, that's too much.
So it's here, I guess. I mean, very quickly, there's a link on Apple's website. So this is really funny. This came right on the heels of people like freaking out that Apple had removed it from its website. Clearly, it was in preparation for this page going up. And in my like brief testing, at least, it basically does what it's supposed to do. So it works much better than iPhoto, guys. It's crazy fast. Like I don't know how many my MacBook Pro is in my bag, but
I've seen some like The Verge had a preview along with a couple of other sites, and they had some videos, and they were showing like how quickly it scrolls, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that.
Yeah, because iPhoto just really fell down once you got a really big library, and so it Photos can kind of work in one of two modes, more or less. You can run it just locally with your files, or you can turn on iCloud Photos, and at that point, it syncs your photos up to iCloud, and you can view them all on your devices, no matter where you are. So I have this turned on my iPad, and my test albums are all synced to my iPad. Not as quickly as I thought they would be, but I think I did this on like day 1 or day 2, and I think they're still sort of ramping up. But the photos are all there. If I edit them in one place, the edits show up elsewhere. So if I take a picture of Federico and Mike and I make it black and white on my iPad, when I come back to my computer, that picture is in black and white. And so it's much more seamless than it is currently, where you take iPhoto or like we all three use Dropbox. If you take those photos and sync them over to your device, they're sort of view only, and now you can edit them, and it's more of a Steve Jobs said the truth is in the cloud. That sort of thought that all of your devices are an equal playing field. I think that's great if you're heavy on iOS. But I'm a little worried, guys.
All right, tell me.
So if you look at iTunes Match, which is sort of similar to this, right, where you have local files and you have files in the cloud, and you can sync them and you can remove your local files, but they're still in the cloud, and you can re-download them. iTunes Match is pretty similar to this, but iTunes Match and iTunes, for all of its problems, I think does a pretty decent job at explaining to the user where their file is. So if it's in iCloud or in iTunes Match and not locally, you get a little cloud icon. You can download them, you can remove them. It's very clear. If you delete an image, say, hey, do you want to take this off iCloud as well? And at this point, Photos doesn't have much of that. And there's a lot of language in the settings in Photo of like, store everything on your Mac, which is what I think most people should do at least. And then it's, hey, I want to preserve, keep. I forget what the setting says. Something along the lines of like, keep an eye on my local disk space, and Photos will then like delete things to keep your disk free. But it's really confusing as to what it's actually doing. You guys spoke about this on Upgrade, so I'm not going to rehash everything y'all said, but there's some sort of local cache, and I just worry that at some point you sort of lose track where your photo actually is. And we spoke, I don't know, a month ago about how my iTunes Match situation exploded after I moved my iTunes library, and it took forever to straighten that out. And I actually ran into an album today that's got screwy metadata. It has like random other tracks in it for some reason.
Why do you have to know where the photo is? The photo is in iCloud.
Yeah, but that's what if it goes wrong?
Or what if your credit card doesn't renew your storage because Apple's charging you for it, and what happens then? There's an opportunity here.
They're going to send you an email, I guess, to renew.
But how many people have their, I'm sure one of us has done it at some point. I know I've done it, where you have a recurring bill and your debit card changes, and because it was stolen by Home Depot, and then all of a sudden you're not paying your recurring thing. Like, there is the opportunity, I think, for photos to fall through the cracks in a system like this. It's even possible between PhotoStream and your local albums. It's not real clear when something is locally stored and out of the PhotoStream, and I think that it's still a little too complicated. If iTunes Match explodes and I suddenly have Mumford & Sons interleaved in a Kanye album, like, that's super annoying, but I can deal with it because it's just music, right? I can go re-download it, I can sort it out. But if it takes photos of my kids and all of a sudden I'm missing some of them because I thought they were on iCloud, so I deleted them off my local machine, and really I deleted both copies. Like, that's not good. And I think Apple needs to really make this like fail safe. Like, you cannot, like, there's got to be big alarms going off before you completely nuke something from existence. And currently that's not true. And this is the first build, so there's lots of things
right, so if you try to delete something, like, it just deletes it. Like, you don't know, like, necessarily where you're deleting it from, and or it doesn't kind of say, like, you're deleting this from the cloud now, so it's gone forever. Like, there is no backup of this photo. Like, understand that. Like,
or what happens, like when, like what if you have your photo library on 2 Macs and 1 Mac is offline for 2 weeks and they fall out of sync? Can it get it back updated correctly? Even iTunes Match doesn't do that perfectly every time. And so there's a lot of like these weird edge cases when you have data locally and you have data in the cloud, and there's some layer in between connecting them. Like, it's got to be flawless. Photos cannot drop a file. It can't duplicate a file. Like, it's got to be perfect, and I don't quite trust iCloud to do that yet.
So, like, there's the thing that I don't like is kind of what you touched on, is the idea of like ambiguous deletion, and I get from like a UI and a user experience perspective why that, like, it's just that just works metaphor, that idea. Like, so you've got 40 gigabytes of hard drive space. Oh, and now you've only got 20, so we're going to take away some of your photos for you. It's like, I don't know how, like, because that's so hidden, as in, like, how does it make those decisions? There's just something about that puts me on edge. And yes, in theory, of course, they're in iCloud, and it shouldn't be a problem.
I'm sorry, guys. I still don't understand what's the problem here. Because the photos are in iCloud.
But but the problem is, what if something goes wrong? Like, let's just say, and it will happen to people, like, that something's going to go wrong, right? Because you're not going to have a 100% success rate. Like, at some point, someone's going to have a problem where they're going to lose some files that are in the cloud. And if you keep them on a machine and you think that they might be there, but they're not, because the Photos app. So let's say that you, Federico Vitici, you have 50 gigabytes of photos. That's all you have, right?
Okay.
And you have a 100 gigabyte hard drive. Now, you've selected for Apple to, like, make sure that you've got the right space. And let's say that, like,
well, what I've selected.
There's a setting in the Photos app.
Oh, okay. So there's stuff I don't understand. There's a setting.
Okay. Right. So there's a setting in the Photos app that says effectively. On the Mac. Remove files from this machine if I run low on hard drive space. Okay, so it removes them from your machine.
iOS has the same setting, actually.
Optimize storage. Yeah.
So let's say
the files don't go away. It's like when you tap a photo, it downloads the full resolution. So if you want to save storage, they remove the full resolution, and you still see the thumbnail. Then you can tap it and you re-download it.
But what my point is, like, let's say that you have files removed from your machine. You didn't necessarily know that they were gone because you still see the thumbnails, and then something goes wrong in the cloud, right? Something, because it's going to happen to some people. And then you try and get those files back, and they're not there anymore. Like, that's just, I just have a concern about it, because it's like, I personally don't like the idea of it just, and I probably will never turn this setting on for it to just, or like, remove things and put things back and take them away. Like, I will maybe have it like one machine that always keeps that setting on, and it's just always got everything. But my concern is for, like, the one family, or like the one person who has an 11-inch MacBook Air with a small hard drive, and they select that setting and then something goes wrong. Because the difference between, like,
I think you're overthinking it, honestly. It's just a setting to remove the cache.
All right,
but what happens if the originals...
But then the originals aren't there then, are they? Like,
no, because why are you thinking about originals? This is not like the Finder. You take a picture on your phone and it goes in iCloud, and then it goes to other devices.
Okay, but let's talk about the pictures that you take on your DSLR, you put them into the
Oh,
Photos
but
app.
that's what all people do. Come on.
Okay, you take a picture on your phone. You take a picture on your phone of an important family occasion, right? And you put it on your Mac, and then you think that it's going to be there, and then a problem happens in iCloud, and the picture's not in iCloud anymore, and now the picture's no longer on your Mac. You no longer have that photo.
I got lost there. So why would I take a picture on my phone and then connect it to a computer?
All right, so you take a picture on your phone.
I take a picture. The point is that
I
you
don't know
take a
why you
picture
can't
on your
understand
phone.
this. Like,
No,
the
because
idea-
maybe I'm stupid. I don't understand why I take a picture because I've been using iCloud for library for months. So I take a picture on my phone, and that's it. I'm done. The picture goes into iCloud, and
that's when it works. It's just I have a concern just about. Forget it. We're not going to get through on this. There's no point.
Why are you thinking so much about this?
Because here's
Pictures
the
are
thing. So
important.
here's the bottom line here, that you are trusting Apple, you're trusting iCloud with things that cannot be replaced, right? And so it has to work perfectly. And so far, in very limited testing, it has. But let's just be real here. Apple is not the best cloud service company in the world. And so there's an opportunity, if you don't have the originals on your disk, and the originals are only in iCloud, and you stop paying, or you somehow end up in a situation where you're in between and you don't have the originals and something happens, you could be caught without your original images. And that is something that it might not be a big deal to some people, but is a huge deal to me and a huge deal to a lot of people. And all I'm saying is that Apple has to prove to me that they have their word that I'm not going to say on the air together about this file management stuff. And the app is great. I actually really like the app, but I'm not sold that I'm going to ever choose the setting to optimize disk space. I think I'm always going to have them on my local drive, because that I can put my hands on it. I know that they are there, and I worry that Apple's language around it isn't clear enough. That's all I'm saying. I think if they can, I think they will. I think they will improve this to where it makes more sense to a user when they sit down knowing where their things are. Because if you don't know where your things are and you make a bad decision, you could lose your originals, right? And that's bad. That's thing. That's all we're saying. I think how you end up there's a bunch of different ways, but ultimately they've got to make it crystal clear so you can understand what's going on. So anyways,
guys, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
No.
I don't mean to sound like I don't believe you, because I believe you have a problem. It's just I don't think I have the same problem, so it's difficult for me to understand like this talk about the originals. Like I don't follow what the problem is. Probably because I don't use a Mac, so that's I think the main problem is my notion of file is different.
You don't have originals.
I never see that. That's why I never see the actual file. So I don't understand what's going on. What is an original?
You gave up the originals a long time ago.
What is an original? I mean, I just take a picture and it goes to iCloud. While Steven was talking, real talk. While Steven was talking, I opened the Photos app on my phone.
Yep.
And I went to 2 years ago. I tapped the little thumbnail, and there's a spinner in the bottom right, and it loads for like 3 seconds, and then I see the original. Is that the original?
Well,
that's the original.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about like a file that you can see,
like a JPEG.
Yes. Because you kind of give that up, and if Apple were going to like delete the master copy from your machine, which they can...
So you see the file on the Mac, the actual JPEG file of the photo.
I think you still can. You can still inspect the package and open it up, right? And you can see the file.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So why didn't you guys explain this to me before?
Well, me and Steven understood it.
Well, I didn't. Clearly, I didn't.
So there's sort of in conjunction with this, there's been a lot of conversation around the fact this is not a professional application. Now, it supports RAW images. You can import and sync raw images, but you don't have a lot of the raw editing controls that you get in something like Lightroom or Bridge or Photoshop. And
what is a RAW? I always wonder what is a RAW. It's like a package of files.
it is an image. So RAW is actually a term for a lot of different formats. Different camera vendors use different formats, but basically it's an image that you have a lot more data to it. It's not a compressed image like a JPEG is, and so you have a lot more editing capability. They're a lot bigger, a lot higher quality usually. And Aperture and Lightroom can deal with RAW files directly, but Aperture's going away. And there's this article over at iMore that is basically saying, Photos is a sort of consumer, maybe prosumer app, but it's not a Lightroom competitor. The controls, the fine-grained controls you have in something like Lightroom, you don't exist here. And I agree with that. But what I think is interesting is that there's sort of this idea of, you have iMovie and you have Final Cut, you have GarageBand and you have Logic. Is something like Aperture going to make a comeback? Is there a reason for Apple to do a professional Photos app at some point? Since they have one, they haven't really cared about it in a long time. Like Aperture's actually for a long time, Aperture's been in a pretty sorry state. So I don't know, do you guys think Apple cares about the professional photographer anymore? Or do you think that they're just going to go middle of the road and move on?
I think care is a too
That's
harsh a word.
That's a loaded word. Word.
But it is the word that everybody uses. I think that it doesn't need to be high in Apple's priorities anymore to provide and develop pro applications, because there are not lots, but there are competitors, right? I think that it is potentially, I'm sorry, Aperture users, a waste of Apple's resources to be competing with Adobe to create something like Aperture. And I genuinely feel like that my beloved Logic will go that way one day. I think that Apple's time as being the vendor of the Pro app, it doesn't need to exist anymore, because the Pro app vendors, they all have they're all third-party versions. They're all third-party competitors. Apple don't need to try and lock in the creative professional like they used to, because that's they're just there now. Like, you don't need to have that advantage. Like, I think they tried to and succeeded for many years, right, to get like the illustrators and the photographers and the audio professionals and stuff, like by creating their own apps. I think that Apple's business is so focused in other markets and other areas now that continuing to devote so much time and resource to expensive apps when they don't even charge really expensive prices for them anymore, I think it's kind of a fool's errand for them. And I think they're realizing that, which is why they're starting to phase out or significantly re-architect these applications, like Final Cut, for example, how that changed, if they even keep that going. But they changed it significantly. They did a similar kind of thing for Logic. It had a massive overhaul. And I think that stuff like Aperture is going to go away. Eventually, I think Logic's going to go away, and they're just going to start focusing on making their consumer apps like a good kind of place, like the prosumer, like try and make them fit in the middle somewhere, but like trying to service that market completely, I don't think they need to consider dealing with anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really divided on it. I think that they could come back and do something professional. I mean, even with the Retina iMac like videos, like photographers, yay! But I don't know. I think if something does come, I think they're going to have Photos, fully rounded out and then move upstream. But I don't think they necessarily have to. I think mostly because professional photographers don't really like this sort of idea of like, I want to sync all my files around all my devices. Like, that doesn't really appeal to a lot of professional photographers, at least that I know, that they need the editing tools and they already have their own crazy storage system. and Photos is very much about the storage system. So maybe it is a sort of a different, like, philosophical issue that they've got to deal with as well. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I think that it's fine that this is consumer oriented. I think it needs to be, but we'll see where they go in the future, I guess.
I don't have thoughts. So.
Well, I mean, it's totally different for you. I mean,
yeah,
do you want to see like Apple start to create professional level applications for iOS?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if people ask for it, if there's a market for professional users and photography, I guess. But I mean, there's always the third-party ecosystem.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wonder. Like, is third parties better to service that market than Apple? I believe
probably.
Yes.
As long as Apple makes solid APIs, that's bigger concern for me.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they allow other people to go where they don't want to go, I think it's better, because they seem, especially in the past few years, they seem that they've moved away from the pro market to let more like normal people do basic stuff in a decent way, rather than have no solution for the stupid people like me, and have Aperture or iPhoto, which was one professional and the other too complex.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have the Photos app, which is for everybody. And so if they don't want to spend resources and time to do a new Aperture, maybe they can just do the APIs and let Adobe do Lightroom and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's better. So Apple doesn't do half-baked solutions everywhere. They do one simple solution for everybody, and they let other people. That's the thing about the App Store. It lets people do stuff.
Yeah, I think
nice.
it's fundamentally a better way for Apple to do business is to focus themselves that way.
They cannot cover every possible market. So
just do as much as you can to the best of your abilities, rather than kind of like half-assing both.
Yeah. From my perspective, it seems better, I think.
Arguably, that's what they were doing with Photos anyway. I don't know how good Aperture was, but I know a lot of people that I know and trust their opinion in those things were using Lightroom. And I remember never go near iPhoto.
Yeah, I tried to use iPhoto on the Mac before. My girlfriend still uses iPhoto on the Mac. I don't know how she does it. I tried to use iPhoto on iOS 2 years ago when it came out. It was so confusing. There were like different interfaces all over the place, and it was not just about the skeuomorphic stuff. It was really difficult to use and to understand and to browse. It was super awkward. And now the Photos app, it's just, there's a few things I don't like about the Photos app, like the way that it doesn't let you see photos on a map. I know you can enter the details for like a specific section of what is called a moment in the view, in the Photos view. You can view a moment on a map, but you cannot view every single photo on a map like you can do like in day one. You can see all your photos from all your years in your collection on a map. There's a few things I don't like, but overall it's much better. And for me, it's been super like it's been, and I mean this in a good way, it's been really nothing. I don't have to think about it. It's just there, like it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be there, and it does the stuff for me. And I just take a picture, and the picture is everywhere, and then I tap it, and it's what it's supposed to be. And I'm paying €1 a month, so I guess that's a good price. It should be free. It's kind of awkward that it's not free. It should be free, I think, 20 gigs at least. But whatever, Again, I think over the years I kind of become stupid in a way, because I used to do, the Finder, JPEGs, and at one point I had a PHP script, like I'm some sort of bizarro Marco Arment, a PHP script to move my photos around. And now I'm just letting iCloud sync my pictures. And I know that many people have horror stories about Apple photo apps deleting pictures. There's my friend Nate on Twitter. He had his iPhoto library wiped clean by iPhoto a couple of years ago. That was scary.
That's
but
fine.
now, yeah, now
That's why you need the originals.
Yes, I'm just saying now. iCloud photo libraries has been, it's there, and it works. So I'm happy so far. Hopefully they won't, screw it up. They won't do anything stupid to iCloud. I don't know. I think to answer your question, Mike, I think it's a better solution to let most people have something that works rather than different segments with something they're not really happy with.
Yeah, and to round this out, the upside of all of this is that if you use the iCloud stuff, you do have a backup of your images, which is more than what most people have currently, I think. So there's a lot of upside to this. I don't mean to throw cold water over the whole thing. I just need Apple to prove that they can be trusted with it. But I think for a lot of people, it is going to give them another layer of protection they don't have currently. I don't know how many people I've seen over the years doing tech support who lose documents, and the first thing they ask is about, you lose data, and the first thing they ask about is photos when a hard drive crashes or something like that. So I think there's a lot of upside to this. I do wish that it was not that the storage was free. You do have to pay for iCloud storage still. It's much more reasonable than it used to be, and you can pay for a lot more than you used to be able to. But it's still something that I think that Apple should. Should throw this in for people, especially if they want this to take off. If it's behind a paid thing, if you're paying $10 a month for 500 gigs of storage, it's going to turn a lot of people off. And so I would like to see them address that, but I don't really have any anticipation that they actually will.
I still subscribe.
Actually, I have a thought, if you guys don't mind. There is one thing I'm not happy with about iCloud is that they don't explain iCloud to people. Like, I know that there's the website and they have sections in the settings, but like every time my friends and my family, they come to me and they ask me, what is iCloud? Am I supposed to pay because it says that I'm over the 5 gigabytes? And I think, especially for photos, they should have some sort of explanatory video on iPhones and iPads. And with simple words, they tell you enable this iCloud photo library and all your photos go into iCloud, and you don't need to delete photos from your device anymore to make space for something else. Because all the time I see, for instance, I'm going to a concert, right? And my friend says, oh, I cannot shoot a video because people record videos of live performances. I cannot shoot video because I need to delete some photos. And so they go through the camera roll, and maybe they do these sort of weird magic tricks. They send pictures over WhatsApp to somebody else as a backup. That's crazy. So they send the picture and then they delete the picture so they can have more space for the video. So they need some sort of simple, human, non-geeky explanation that says, you enable this feature, you give us $1 every month, and we store your pictures. And it needs to be an explanation that my mom doesn't need to go to the Apple website. My father doesn't need to go to Mac Stories and read a crazy guy talking about iCloud. It needs to be there and needs to explain to people what it is. Because I think right now, Apple always has done these sort of explanations of iCloud, and people still don't get it. So I think there needs to be a simple way, maybe make it like the trackpad videos they have in OS X to explain the gestures. They actually show you a hand doing the gestures. Yeah. So show me somebody with iCloud. Show me Tim Cook walking into a server room or whatever, indicating, pointing his finger to a server rack or something. Show me a video of what is iCloud. And I think that sounds so stupid and maybe kind of gross to show me a video, but I think most people still don't get iCloud. They won't get iCloud photo library, especially after all the confusion of photo stream and whatever. Just make it simple. Make it simple. Explain it even simpler, if it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think it's overwhelming to approach it because it is so many things. Right, like iCloud is a collection of, I don't even know how many, 10 features at this point or something. So I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of room for improvement on that front.
That WhatsApp thing, like, I can totally see that happening. And it's like the things people do, like with computers, is terrifying.
Yes. Yeah. Something like, I think it was last year. I went to this concert with a group of friends, and they started sending pictures as attachments over email, and then they deleted the pictures from the photo library because they wanted to take a video, and then they said the video will go to Facebook. So when the video is on Facebook, then I delete the video from. Oh my god! Oh no! Please stop. But yeah, they do crazy things.
All right, we still have one more thing we want to get to, but before we do that, let me thank our final sponsor this week. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Smile, and today I want to talk to you about PDF Pen Pro 7. PDF Pen Pro 7 is a new update that brings new, fantastic professional features to Smile's versatile PDF editor for OS X, including the ability to edit OCR text from scanned pages, exporting to Excel, PowerPoint, and PDF archive formats, and PDF form creation with interactive signature fields. PDF Pen Pro 7 also includes these new features that are also found in PDF Pen 7, which is the standard version, because PDF Pen 7 and then PDF Pen Pro 7. So Pro 7 has those things I just mentioned, and then standard PDF Pen 7 has an updated modern Yosemite design. Of course, so does Pro 7. OCR text proofing for scanned pages, context-sensitive pop-up menus for quick editing functions, performance improvements in loading and saving your documents, and compatibility of iCloud Drive, allowing you to access your files everywhere, and so much more. I use PDF Pen Pro a bunch. It's kind of one of those things, again, like I mentioned Microsoft Office earlier, that when you start running a business, like after a couple of weeks, I'm like, I need PDF Pen all the time now because contracts come through, or like I get these documents that are sent to me in weird file formats and I just want to make a PDF out of them and maybe change some bits and bobs here and there. Like you can open Word files and export them as PDFs, which I like to do, so then I can view them really easily and quickly. Also, our friend at the internet, Mr. David Sparks, he's done a great set of videos that show the great power of PDF Pen Pro 7 and PDF Pen 7. These can be found at Smile's website as well. But this is kind of one of those apps that, like, if you do anything with PDFs, you ever fill out any forms or anything like that, this is an app that you need. And it's kind of one of those apps that once you have it, you start to realize how many more things you can do with it. So, PDF Pen is totally essential. I think it's something that should be in many people's Mac toolkit, and it's something that you should be thinking about if you haven't looked at it before. So go and find out more about PDF Pen Pro 7 and PDF Pen 7 from Smile at smilesoftware.com/connected. Thank you so much to Smile for their support of this episode.
So Tim Cook, a guy you might have heard of, spoke, I guess, yesterday at a Goldman Sachs Conference, and iMore has a link to, basically they listened and what is the word I'm looking for? Transcribed Tim Cook's comments, and it's super long, and there's some interesting things in here, and I thought maybe we could just talk about some points that jumped out at us.
Before we do that, I want to mention how this happened for me this morning. So, I knew that this call was happening because I was seeing some of the headlines, and then I opened my iPhone this morning, and you'd sent me a link and was like, "Read this for the show," and I'm like, "Okay, no worries." I open it up and I start reading, like, and I'm scrolling through a couple of paragraphs through, and I look at the scroll bar, and I'm like, "Oh my lord, how long is this? Like, it's like 6,000 words or something. Like, it's a full transcription of like a 40-minute talk. So then I started looking around online for the audio version, right? Because I was like, there must be audio of this, and I don't want to read this. So I'm looking around online, and I could only find like the live stream audio, on Apple's website. So I started listening to that. That was 45 minutes that run for. I was like, oh, it's probably be faster for me to read it. So then I thought, oh, maybe somebody's huff-duffed it. So then I could like put it into Overcast and do it at double speed. No, they hadn't. So I then remembered friend of the show, Mr. Matthew Bischoff's app Velocity, which is a speed reading app. So I put it in Velocity and I had it done in 15 minutes. And
quite a workflow you got there.
It's a whole thing that I had. And I felt happy about myself because I found a way to. That was a life hack. Actually,
do you wanna write us for Mac Stories?
If you want to just transcribe what I just said, then you can have it. I'm not writing it.
Okay.
Okay. So we can just kind of blast through this. He starts off with sort of so Apple's coming off their strongest quarter ever, which we really didn't talk about. It kind of fell in between shows for us a little bit. But basically, Apple sold all the things and made all the money.
Yeah, and during this talk as well, like Apple reached their highest market cap of all time, right? Yeah,
which is just nuts. So he's talking about hardware, he's talking about software, but what I really came away from this beginning part is that he talks about services a lot. He talks about HealthKit and HomeKit and CarPlay. And really, I think only the first one of those is doing anything. Like, I haven't heard much about HomeKit. CarPlay is like a thing, but maybe not very good. It surprised me that he pushed them so hard.
I did find myself kind of thinking, oh yeah, they did do all that stuff. Like,
they did.
I just totally forgotten about these things and was like, yeah, okay, it's in theory very ambitious. It just not much has been done with it yet,
It's just because you don't have a car.
Or a home.
Or if your car.
Oh yeah, I have no help.
What if your car is your home?
Then I guess HomeKit, HealthKit, and CarPlay work well.
Two birds with one stone. Still.
Yeah. So is it that this stuff is just going to be on a long cycle and it's going to be a little while before you really see like HomeKit take off? Is it that HealthKit was so bad at launch that developers are afraid of it and haven't integrated with it yet? Is it that CarPlay is only reserved in new cars and a lot of people don't buy brand new cars? Like, I don't know. Like, clearly this stuff is not making a big impact now, but maybe it will in the future, or maybe it will just fizzle out. Like, I don't know, iDVD themes. Like, I don't know. It's just weird that he pushed it as hard as he did.
Are you comparing people's health to iDVD themes?
There was a time people cared about iDVD themes,
And now it's not.
And now nobody cares about their health.
Poor iDVD.
I looked at especially the health.
I just think it's funny. He picked iDVD of all failed
I don't
projects.
know. It's just like a thing that was a thing and now it's not, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Reading Tim say this stuff, like, it did make me think about HealthKit as like really something that will come into its own with the Apple Watch, and that's when it will start to become sensible. Like, he mentioned one thing that I don't know if I knew this or I'd forgotten about this, like about how the Apple Watch will tap you on the wrist if you're sitting down for too long, and it's like, I really want that.
Yes,
that's something I need, and I like that. And it did, that taptic feedback thing, like, I'm really interested in that because the word, like, it taps you. I mean, okay, like, I don't think that we can fully understand how that feels until it happens, because
feels like Tim Cook is holding your hand.
I mean, just
working,
which is exactly what I want. So
okay,
we're all good here. So carry on, Stephen.
I think it's just like just tap your wrist. So he goes from that, talks about IBM, which is boring, talks about the environment, and this they make an announcement with their first solar partnership. Do you guys see this? They're building a new solar farm that's like 1,300 acres.
With rockets. It will be quite a story.
Maybe.
Just saying.
Rockets. it's to power the Apple Campus 2, which is really cool, and some other things. I mean, it reminded me of when was it, a couple of years ago when someone was like badgering Tim Cook in a meeting about like that the environmental stuff wasn't a good use of money, and he was like, if all you care about the ROI is get out of the stock, right? Like this so far to me, like if you zoom way out on Apple and Tim Cook's leadership, like the two things that stand out are the watch and his relentless push for Apple becoming
I would
a more
also
green
throw diversity
entity.
into the mix there as well.
I think it's great.
I think that's been another key thing.
Yes, the intersection of diversity.
about
No, he
that.
actually told the people in the audience
Yeah.
that they needed to have more women, which
Yeah.
was kind of awesome. Yeah.
He threw a sick burn in like for no reason. I
Yeah.
loved it. He's just like, yeah, there's a lot of guys here.
Yeah, he's like on the stage. He's like, "Oh, by the way, you guys, Goldman Sachs. These are the same. Do you guys ever seen the Twitter account GS Elevator, the Goldman Sachs elevator? It's like tweets for people from the Goldman Sachs. It's awful things they say in the elevator of Goldman Sachs office, whatever building. I don't know. It's a funny Twitter account.
I'll put it in the show notes.
GS Elevator, yeah.
Looking GS Elevator. So it talks a little bit, it kind of moves from that and talks about the watch, and basically says that it's sort of like next in line with iPod, iPhone, iPad levels of importance, which I don't know if we talked about it. So sometimes I get confused as we said something or I hear it on another podcast, so forgive me, but they're very confident about the watch. And like even in this thing saying that it's going to be like as impactful as these other devices is pretty bold.
Yeah, with MG.
Was it? I black out during many podcasts. Do you guys see that? Like, do you think that like in 10 years the watch is going to make
I can't see
this
it
sort
right
of difference
now.
that the iPod and
I
iPhone
think
did?
they're being too confident. Like the confidence says something which might be good, that they believe in it. I don't see it like being like, how they during the watch announcement they show like we had these 3 breakthrough things, like, and they show like the Mac and the iPod and the iPhone. Yeah. I don't think in 20 years the watch is going to be one of those. Like, I just don't see it.
I think the work they're doing on the watch rather than the watch itself as a device, as a name, will make an impact in history.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think the work on wearable and like, because you're going to end up with a computer on your skin anyway. I think that's a fact personally. So I think the work will be remembered more than the brand.
Yeah, which is probably not how it will be for the Mac. Like, it's not how it's going to be for the Mac or the iPhone. Like, we'll remember those products, but maybe like we'll basically they'll say like, if you remember, we started this with a watch.
But even to an extent, you already doing the same with the iPod and the iPhone, because part of the iPhone comes from the iPod. You know what I'm trying to say? That basically,
yeah, I mean,
like it'll set this. Maybe there will be the Apple Watch, and then after the Apple Watch, like a big wearable thing, and then like the Apple Watch will be remembered, but there will be the next thing based on the Apple Watch. It'll be like the iPhone, because the iPod surely changed history and music, but the iPhone really changed society.
Mm-hmm.
That's. I think I'll go down in history. I don't know.
I think that's fair. I think what the watch lacks that those other things have is a unique interface. Like the watch is still touch, right? Like you have the digital crown, but it's only used in certain situations where the mouse, the click wheel, and using your finger were so defining to those original products. I just don't see the watch having that same sort of weight historically, but we're on this side of it. So ask me again when I'm, 10, 15
you will
years
be
down
like
the road.
70.
At least 85.
You'll still be able to podcast 15 years? Just wondering.
Maybe. Yeah. Just turn the oxygen down lower so you don't hear it. He has this quote after this, and he says, Tim's been with Apple since like 97. He came back. He came to Apple after Steve came back, right after Steve came back. And he says, I'm not a historian, so I can't tell you about the beginning of time, but I really don't think Apple was ever a hardware company. Basically saying that he views Apple as a software company first, which is something Steve Jobs said several times. And it's something that I think even in talking with Photos just a couple of minutes ago, I do think that Apple views itself as a software company first, and that the hardware is just a means to an end. That the iPhone is what it is, so iOS can be.
I don't disagree with that.
What it is,
but
that makes sense.
For a software company, they really treat their hardware well. Like it's not like that. They're just kind of like, we just make a phone. Like they're like, look at the diamond cut chamfer edge. Like, and I'm not saying it's not a criticism. It's just interesting, like a company, like because arguably at the moment they're doing hardware better than software. People don't complain about the way that their iPhones are put together as much as they complain about the way that their phones crash.
Yeah, and I think maybe a more appropriate way of saying it now is that Apple is a user experience company. That it is, even like again with Photos, Apple is trying to blur the lines between software and service. That you don't really know where the application ends and the cloud begins. And while I might have issues with that at times, it's hard to argue that it is a bad thing in the grand scheme of things to merge services and software. And I think Apple very clearly, their stuff works better when you have iCloud turned on, or same way that Android works a lot better if you have a Google account. So that's a trend overall in the industry, but I think Apple is out there in front. I don't know, it jumped out at me in reading the transcript because it's something that Jobs said. It's the old Alan Kay quote that if you want to be serious about, or if you want to write your own software, you have to be serious about hardware.
Tim should have called you for the historian.
I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's easier to test
what's up with that
hardware than it is to put together good software.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was kind of poking fun, but like it's just an interesting thing that I find that yes, I agree they're a software company, but like the hardware is not. It's not like as a software company they don't care about hardware, because they clearly do, because they go to much larger lengths than anybody else. That was kind of my point, and then I was kind of poking fun.
I think people would be really, really concerned if Apple's hardware started to be of lesser quality, if iPhones started, not the stupid gates that there are every year, like if iPhones started to to have like cracked screens for no reasons, or like but for real,
or you could bend them.
like it would be a problem, because people just expect the Apple hardware to be I guess that it's not something you need to worry about. Even if people buy a lot of iPhone cases. That's another thing I noticed. I bought a case myself eventually. People really protect their Apple hardware, I think.
Wait, you have an iPhone case on now?
Talked about this?
You mentioned it on Twitter.
No,
guys. Yes.
Did you? You badgered me on
Where's
using
my
phone. I believe you said as Johnny.
No. I changed my. Oh, come on! I never told you this. This is serious.
This is serious follow-up.
Misplaced follow-up. So, basically, my after long consideration, the phone inside the case is ugly. Like it's so I don't see the phone, and I'm sad, and I'm resisting the temptation of holding my phone as Johnny Ive intended. And basically, my problem is that I'm too clumsy. And I was dropping my iPhone 6 consistently almost every day. So in spite of my philosophical belief that phones, and especially iPhones, should be naked as men are when they come into this world. In spite of that, I had to put my phone in a case.
But also, like people, Federico, we wear clothes. You know.
Yeah, that's. Come on, don't. Why do you need to be so? What's a good adjective for you, Michael? Precise?
Yeah, we'll go with that. That's a better
Are
one.
you a precise person? Okay, yeah, I'm trying to be polite, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I put my phone in a case because otherwise I don't want to, throw my money out of the window, Steven. It's like this 64 iPhone 6 cost me like 800 euros, probably more. Yes, that's like with the new dollar exchange rates. That's like $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
Benjamins. Dollars. And so I disagree with myself, basically. The phone looks ugly in this thing. I bought a silicone case, an Apple silicone case, because I like the Apple logo.
What color?
Black,
okay.
I think. Dark, space gray, whatever. Black. And I don't like it, but I had to. But my point is that people really use their imagination when they buy iPhone cases. And I saw people with iPhones inside like cases with whole like structures on them, like little objects popping out of the case, like bunny ears.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen this?
I've seen bunny ear iPhone cases a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's like cases with whole stuff going on, there's like themed cases.
You should get a color. You should get a color, man. It improves your life.
That's too crazy.
I got a red one and I love it.
No, I'm not a color guy. And I like.
What about a Apple Watch case? Kind of snaps on around.
So basically, yes, Steven. I have my phone in a case, and I feel like a terrible person.
Wow.
I feel terrible for this because then my friends are like, oh, you put the iPhone in a case, so because I made fun of my friends, for years. Yeah.
Well, the 6 is slippery. It's just like a little stone.
I think also growing up, I've become more.
It's no good.
Inefficient at using my hands. In general.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
I mean,
that's really rough.
I mean,
you should go to the
handling
hospital.
Objects. Okay.
I think we're done.
So yes, I bought a case. A case of the teaches. Yeah.
Do we have anything more? Are we done?
We are.
Yeah.
Can I do one more Tim Cook quote? We'll skip the rest of it. It's fine. He talks about China and Apple Pay and lots of other things. But he says 5 years ago, we were less than $1 billion in revenue. In the last 12 months, we were at $38 billion. That's insane. Right,
it's a whole thing. Like the amount of money, like it's you might as well just say, and we made glibbity gibbet. Like it doesn't even mean anything anymore. It's so much money. It's just an inconceivable amount of money. Like
imagine the iCloud storage they could give to people.
Exactly. If you want to find the show notes for this week's episode, then you should point your web browser over to relay.fm/connected/26. If you want to find us on Twitter, there's a couple of ways you can do that. We have an account for the show. It's _connectedfm. Stephen does a great job of keeping user engagement high with ever-increasing levels of customer sat via the social engagement platform.
I can't even hear you anymore.
We're also individually on Twitter. Stephen is at ISMH, and Federico is at Vitici, VITICCI. I am at iMyke, IMYKE. Federico writes the fantastic MacStories.net, and Stephen the equally fantastic 512pixels.net. We'll all be back next week for another episode of your favorite podcast about Apple on the planet. Thanks again to our sponsors this week, PDF Pen Pro 7, from Smile, Hover, and Automatic. But most of all, thank you for listening. Until then, say goodbye, gentlemen.
Arrivederci.
Bye.
Adios.
That guy got crazy.